This is how one ought to see, I kept saying, as I looked down at my trousers, or glanced at the jeweled books on the shelves, at the legs of my infinitely more than Langolian chair. This is how one ought to see, how things really are. And yet, there are reservations. For if one always saw like this, one would never want to do anything else. Just looking, just for divine, not self... Oh, goodness. Hello, New Zealand. Glad you could drop by. Well, Aldous, Huxley and I have been doing a little bear hunting. Why don't you join us? An Aldous, Huxleyan bear hunt. We'll go this way. Just a moment. I'll just get the old device here. Story. These are the bear hunting grounds. Astonishingly elusive at this time of year, I have to say. Although bear hunting is not proven to be too rich in the rainforests of the North Island. We are not. Just looking, just being the divine not self of flower, of book, of chair, of flannel, that would be enough. But in that case, what about other people? What about human relations? In the recordings of that morning's conversation, I find the question constantly repeated, what about human relations? How could one reconcile this timeless bliss of seeing, as one ought to see, with the temporal duties of doing what one ought to do, and feeling as one ought to feel? One ought to be able, I said, to see these trousers as infinitely important, and human beings as still more infinitely important. One ought, but in practice it seemed to be impossible. This participation in the manifest glory of things left no room, so to speak, for the ordinary, the necessary concerns of human existence, above all for the concerns involving persons. For persons themselves, and in one respect at least, I was now a not-self, simultaneously perceiving and being the not-self of the things around me. To this newborn not-self, the behaviour, the appearance, the very thought of itself, it had momentarily ceased to be, and of all other selves, its one-time fellows, seemed not indeed distasteful. For distastefulness was not one of the categories in terms of which I was thinking, but enormously irrelevant. Compelled by the investigator to analyse and report on what I was doing, and how I longed to be left alone with eternity in a flower, infinitely in 4 chair legs, and in the absolute in the folds of a pair of flannel trousers. Well, we seem to be making some progress on our bear hunting mission. We've come across a residence. This could be the sort of place that a bear would live. These cars, for example. A bear of class, a bear of style. Would a bear be seen in a Volkswagen of that sort? Let us continue. I realised that I'm deliberately avoiding either words who were with me in the room, deliberately refraining from making too much of words. One was my wife, the other man I respected and greatly liked, but both belonged to a world from which, for the moment, masculine had delivered me. The world of selves, of time, of moral judgments and utilitarian considerations. The world, and it was this aspect of human life I wished above all else to forget, of self-assertion, of cocksureness, of overvalued words and idolatrously worship. Good gracious. There's a clearing ahead. There's an opening in the bush. Come. Very mysterious. Right, if there's a bear, you stay behind and I'll go first. At this stage of the proceedings, I was handed a large coloured reproduction of a well-known portrait by Cézanne, the head and shoulders of a man in a large straw. Are you scared? I'm not. Not very much. I've done this before, you know. Caught a bear. Let's just gather our breath for a little bit before we approach the world above. Goodness, this is like pulling teeth, isn't it? Tell you what, you go first and you reconnoitre. Stage of the proceedings, I was handed a large coloured reproduction of the well-known self-portrait by Cézanne, the head and shoulders of a man in a large straw hat, red-cheeked, red-lipped, with rich black whiskers and a dark, unfriendly eye. It is a magnificent painting. But it was not as a painting that I now saw it, for the head promptly took on a third dimension, and it came to life as a small goblin-like man looking out through a window in the page before me. I started to laugh, and when they asked me, "What pretension?" I kept repeating, "Who on earth does he think he is?" The question was not addressed to Cézanne in particular, but to the human species at large. Who did they all think they were? Like Arnold Bennett and the Dolomites, I said. Suddenly remembered seeing, happily immortalised in a snapshot of A.B., some 4 or 5 years before his death, toddling along a wintry road at Cortina da Piazza. Around him lay the virgin snow. In the background was more than a Gothic aspiration of red crags. There was dear, kind, unhappy A.B., consciously overacting the role of his favourite character in fiction himself, a hardened person. There he went, toddling slowly in the bright alpine sunshine, his thumbs in the armholes of a yellow waistcoat which bulged a little lower down with the graceful curve of a Regency bow window. Oh, New Zealand, I see you're back after abandoning the chase. Well, wasn't that exciting? I hope you weren't too frightened. I enjoyed myself immensely. And now, as you can see, I have the harmless brute hanged, skinned, and resting as a trophy on my wall. And let that be a lesson to all helpless creatures.